There we go. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, and welcome to IPSI's weekly forum on Africa, Israel, and Black America. I am your host, Joshua Washington, Executive Director of the Institute for Black Solidarity with Israel. I am normally joined by my lovely co-host and our Speakers Bureau Chief, Olga Mishwe Washington. She was not able to join this evening, so you all are with me today. I hope that is okay with you. I know that me personally, I prefer having her here with us, but we still have a lot of things to get into today, so we're going to get right into it. First of all, that theme song that you heard, that you always hear every week, is called "The First 7 Miles" by Randy Sandoli. You can check that out by searching for him on all streaming platforms. He has an album entitled Simcha. That's what that song is on. The whole album is incredible. If you want to check that out, you can totally do that by going to randysandoli.com, actually, or just searching his name, Randy Sandoli, on all streaming platforms. If this is your first time with us here at this forum, we are the Institute for Black Solidarity with Israel. You can find us by going to ibsi.org. I hope you guys can, I know you can't see my face right now, but ibsi.org, you can go to our website and check out IPSI. You can also, if you've never heard of us before, so you can go on our website, you can look at the content that we have. You can check out the videos we have, why we started, the origins of IPSI. You can also go to ibsi.substack.com and check out our weekly or our regular newsletter, Africa Israel Weekly. It has articles, it has podcast episodes, it has premium content and free content as well. So you can check that out, and it's a great way to support us. Also, another good way to support IPSI is to become a donor, to give a donation. If you go to ibsi.org/donate, and your donation goes a long way. You can do that. You can give a small amount. You can be a legacy builder and give a monthly amount, or you can give a one-time donation, which would just be greatly appreciated. We've said this before, and we continue to say it. The need for IPSI has grown a lot, exponentially in these past couple of years, and we need to be able to match the need, right? So the resources coming in need to be able to match the need for IPSI. We've been, our senior staff has been all over the place, even in these past couple of months. I meant to share the picture here, but for those who follow us, you've seen it. My wife and I were in DC just last week with Dr. Alveda King, the niece of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. She was hosting a luncheon, and they gave us some time at the event to talk about the work of IPSI at a table full of very established leaders in the Christian community, very established leaders in the civil rights, during the civil rights era, and now still. And we were able to share that, which was really amazing. And for those who know Alveda King, she is a Zionist through and through, and she's just a powerhouse when it comes to the other initiatives that she runs as well in this space politically, and also as a Christian woman. So and so forth. I mean, there's a lot of things. While we were there, actually, at the same time, our CEO was in Miami at an event, and he might come on a little bit later on to share more about that. But more and more, whether it's in terms of the levels of leadership, and then in terms of just the Black community in general, IPSI is being called on more and more to speak to some of these things that are going on in our world today, which we'll be talking a little bit about today. Last thing is, you can go to our merch store, ibsi.org, and purchase merch. So you can go to ibsi.org/donate to donate if you want something to show for it. If you want to get something like a water bottle, you can get, we have different types of shirts. I'm wearing a Legacy Builder t-shirt. You can't really see it right now, but it's right there. If you want to have a journal that you want to keep with you, or you can check out our store and buy some merchandise to let your friends know that you supported IPSI. And you have something pretty cool to show for it. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Now, we have to get into some things pretty quickly here, because this is more, it actually is kind of like it's one point, but it jumps off into a few different things, and we're going to get into that right now. So firstly, I hope you guys can still see me. Okay, good. You guys can see me. Okay, so firstly, because this is something that has just been posted, we follow a page called Canary Mission, and what they mainly do is they post things that you probably would never see on the news. Like, for instance, on October 8th, 2023, the day after the massive invasion and slaughtering of over 1,200 Israelis and the kidnapping of over 200 more, there were several groups in the United States who were celebrating this. There was a big rally that happened in New York the next day. And Canary Mission, there were people who are part of their group who either go to these things and film them, or they just, they follow these other anti-Israel accounts and they take them. So Canary Mission posted about that, right? They post about these things that are happening, like I said, that you would never hear about in mainstream news. And one of the things that they documented, they called it bringing the war home. And so I want to share with you this video. If our producer has that up, and then we'll talk a little bit more about that.
I caution you of the days to come, because they will not be easy. There are people among us today who might not be with us next year at this conference. And this is the reality. Because the liberation struggle requires sacrifice, and I know everyone here is prepared to make that sacrifice.
In May 2024, over 100 organizations gathered for the People's Conference for Palestine in Detroit, Michigan. More than 3,000 activists were in attendance. Speakers celebrated the October 7th massacre, called for resistance against the West, and mapped out a vision for the destruction of America from within.
The Palestinians who came to the United States understood their role immediately upon arrival.
We, the movement for Palestine in North America and across the world, are here to fight until victory.
This violent movement has been growing for decades. It's made up of groups including Within Our Lifetime, Students for Justice in Palestine, the Palestinian Youth Movement, and many others. After the October 7th attacks, anti-Israel groups in America were emboldened. They saw the massacre as an opportunity to intensify hostility toward Jews and America.
When I think about the USF, it should burn! Death to America!
As the movement worked nonstop to legitimize the Hamas attack, the activists openly flaunted their hatred of Jews and Israel through protests, vandalism, encampments, and violent assaults, both in the streets and on college campuses. Flags of terror organizations became commonplace in public spaces.
I support Hamas! I am Hamas!
We are Hamas! Yes, we're all Hamas, okay?
Activists celebrated the brutality of the October 7th massacre, drawing inspiration from the barbaric acts of terrorism.
It was exhilarating! It was energizing!
Glory to our martyrs, our heroes who made the ultimate sacrifice.
I salute Hamas. A job well done.
On October 7th, Hamas declared war on Israel. On October 8th, their supporters declared war on America.
It is time to bring the war home! It is time to smash this empire!
The goal of the movement is not just to destroy Israel. Their primary target is the U.S. They call America the enemy, the beast, or simply empire.
We're in the belly of the beast. We are in the heart of U.S. empire.
We are here in the belly of the insatiable imperial beast.
Here in North America, in the U.S., the belly of the beast, the heart of empire.
We have to bring down this empire with 1 million cuts.
We will be hitting empire where it hurts most. Bring empire to its knees.
Dismantling the heart of empire is not easy, and it won't be rapid. But we know it's possible.
This panel, y'all, is talking about what is next. to strike at the heart of empire.
The Palestinian American pro-terror movement uses the word resistance as a euphemism for violence. And that resistance is to be accomplished by any means necessary.
We will resist by any, all means necessary. All means necessary.
The resistance, in all its forms.
Resistance, including armed resistance.
Normalized armed struggle.
They are not terrorists, they are freedom fighters.
Our noble, steadfast resistance.
Conference speakers outlined their strategy for bringing the war home.
I believe our fundamental role is to generate political and social crisis within the American ruling class. Mass mobilizations is the primary tactic. Street shutdowns, bridge and train shutdowns, airport caravans and shutdowns, encampments, building takeovers, targeting of weapons manufacturers, shutting down events.
We will be here in the streets, on our campuses, in our classrooms, in our workplaces every day.
We have made the situation untenable for the empire's ruling classes and the political establishment.
They have created a disruptive movement made up of students and faculty, turning young minds into anti-American extremists.
Our movement has helped transform students into revolutionaries.
Iran, Hezbollah, Hamas, and other factions that fight American hegemony in the region. People who are 18 and 19 years old on campuses truly understand these ideas now.
Protesters target cultural and historical landmarks, seeking to destabilize the foundations of American society. They are openly hostile to law enforcement and engage in violent opposition toward the police. The influence of these organizations isn't limited to universities and public spaces. They've even reached the halls of Congress.
Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib.
We're gonna move Congress, and we're gonna move the White House. We're not going anywhere. Free, free Palestine!
The influence of these violent groups is growing, and they are working towards their goal of dismantling America.
Our struggle is a long struggle, and one that stands on the shoulders of thousands of martyrs and thousands of fighters who have committed and who are committing their lives to lay the ground for the revolution we see ahead of us today.
Gaza tells us to escalate for it. That can mean so many different things, but what I will tell you is we need to start sacrificing.
The threat of violence is not theoretical. In this war of resistance, all Americans are potential targets.
Genocide!
These organizations are determined to achieve their revolution, whatever the cost, by any means necessary.
Resistance, by any means necessary.
If the enemy refuses to die, it must be killed.
There is only one solution!
The Palestinian diaspora in North America has committed its martyrs for this cause.
Students have brought the war home.
It is either victory or death.
Either victory or death.
They're losing their ability to control us. And this means that now the gloves are off, and quite frankly, anything is possible.
So again, that was Canary Mission, you guys. That's, like I said, share this video. We know a couple of people there, really great workers, and they expose a lot of stuff. And that's not even, that's kind of barely scratching the surface. What you saw was layers, right? From the streets, the violence happening against Jews, the violence happening, and not just against pro-Israel protesters or pro-Israel rallies, but there are other instances of, and this has been going on for a while, but it ramped up in 2021. Just Jewish kids walking down the street, Jewish students on campus, maybe a kid wearing a kippah on his head, or seen leaving a synagogue, they're being attacked, right? They don't know their politics. They don't know anything about them, but they see that they're Jewish. And this is something that's been happening for a while. And it's in every level. It's in all levels of government. It's in our levels of academia. It's on the streets. And I show you this video both to inform, but also to make a point here. And someone I see, Lee on here commenting saying, why are they tolerated? And this is exactly where I'm going with this. Why are they tolerated? What is going on? Well, what's going on is that what we, and when we, meaning we in the pro-Israel space, and this is something that our staff's been talking about quite a bit, what we are doing is not working. And it hasn't worked for a long time. The way that typically, the way that we tend to combat these things is by attacking it at its face. What I mean by that is you have Students for Justice in Palestine on campus, and then a group forms a pro-Israel group on campus so that those students can counter the SJP students and try to give the general population, the general student body, a different narrative, the truth. It's something for them to actually latch onto and learn more about and teach and all that kind of stuff. And that's great, for a small percentage of the students who really just want to know what's going on. And there have been lots of victories, relative victories, but victories in those spaces. The problem is Students for Justice in Palestine, if I'm going to just stay on that example, Students for Justice in Palestine is, I think it said in the video, connected to the Muslim Brotherhood, but it's more than just connected. Students for Justice in Palestine is the U.S. student wing of, or I should say the Western student wing, because there's SJPs in Canada as well, of the Muslim Brotherhood. The Muslim Brotherhood is a terrorist organization that was founded in 1928. Hamas was founded, it was an outgrowth, it was a Palestinian outgrowth of the Muslim Brotherhood. Okay. Al-Qaeda is an outgrowth of the Muslim Brotherhood. Okay. So this is not something, yes, some people have to dig it up, but this is not something that if you were to say this out loud to someone, let's say high up in the chain, they wouldn't deny it. They would just say that the Muslim Brotherhood isn't a bad organization. That's the thing, right? They would say, no, this is Islamophobic. There's disinformation that you're spreading about the Muslim Brotherhood. It's not true. They wouldn't say it's not true that we don't have connections to the Muslim Brotherhood. They would say the Muslim Brotherhood is nothing to be afraid of. So it's not something that is conspiratorial. It's on paper. We know this for a while now. And what's happening is that what's been going on, I've been seeing posts even just these past few days. And someone just shared a video earlier of ties that Kamala Harris's some of her team has with the Muslim Brotherhood. The only problem is that's been going on even since the early 2000s. The Muslim Brotherhood is not only a terrorist entity, but it is a jihadist group whose aims are to spread jihad all over the world in the name of Allah, right? This is what they want to do. That is what Hamas's goal is as well in Israel. That is what Al-Qaeda's goal is. There's nothing new, right? There's nothing different in terms of that, right? They may have different ways they want to do it and different religious differences, but their goal is to spread their jihad all over the world by force if they need to, by any means necessary, which I thought was just so ironic. They would quote Malcolm X and have Malcolm X as a picture on their wall when he was even in his last years exposing what was going on within the Nation of Islam, the pedophilia, the hit out on his life because he was exposing these things. He said he believes that people are out to kill him. And then, as we all know, people try to deny this, but Farrakhan put a hit out on Malcolm X, right? And Malcolm X was assassinated. So it's just interesting, right? We can never surmise or accurately tell what someone would be doing if they were still alive because they're not alive. But we do know that in the last couple of years of Malcolm X's life, he dedicated that to exposing what he saw on the inside of the Nation of Islam. So he wasn't for your cause by the end of his life, but that's a different thing we're talking about. Now, what we're doing isn't working. Why? Because groups like Students for Justice in Palestine should not be on campuses at all. The moment that you put a pro-Israel group on campus to combat Students for Justice in Palestine, you are legitimizing SJP as a legitimate student group that we just disagree with, simply. You can't play by those rules with people like that. They are already breaking the rules by having their funding from some foreign entity that's designated, that was banned in Egypt, right? You already are doing that. So what needed to have happened when SJP first began, after those things were exposed, I hope you guys can still hear me because I can't see myself at the moment. After those things were exposed, to take legal action against SJP, and actually get them off of campus, right? Get them out of the universities. But what happened was, no, we're going to set up a counter group to counter them. So now these pro-Israel students are doing the best they can and doing what they can and moving up and doing their thing. Many of them unaware of the fact that what they're doing is they're actually battling pawns in a larger scheme of global jihadists, right? In foreign countries. Like, this is not just, so now what's happening is you have Students for Justice in Palestine, former students who have now graduated in the upper echelons of Washington, D.C. Again, I apologize for the technical difficulties. I'm not sure why you all can't see me, but you should be able to soon. As long as you can hear me, we're good. We are going to keep on pushing through this. So I see Pastor Matrilla Hall in here. She said, I believe they use Malcolm X because they know most people will not dig deeper in it. Yep, exactly. That's their tactics. They know people won't dig deeper, so they use these things, they use these phrases. Heck, some people even use Dr. King's quotes, not even knowing that he was a strong, staunch Zionist. They do that. So we're losing this fight because we're fighting with our gloves on, with kid gloves, right? We're losing our fight because we are not attacking this thing at the root. We're attacking at the branches. We're just plucking off, tiny twigs here and there while the tree continues to grow. So now we have SJP students, SJP alumni in Washington, D.C., in our government, in our state capitals all over the world. This is what we're facing now. And until we acknowledge and attack it at that level with that knowledge, we aren't going to cover any ground. So that's what's going on right now. So that's what I like. It's appropriately titled "Bringing the War Home." Israel is on the front lines of a war against global jihadism. It's not just fighting for its own survival; it's fighting for us as well. We don't know it yet, but we are under the same threat. We talked about a few weeks ago Hezbollah's heavy presence all over the world, especially in Latin America, including Mexico, since the 80s. And all that time up to now, you have Hezbollah agents crossing the border, our southern border, into the United States. So this is something that, and it's already been documented. We just found out, it was just told to us just a little while ago, that there are at least 300,000 undocumented immigrants who are in the United States that are unaccounted for. So, or that we don't know anything about. It doesn't take a super smart person to see that we're in a little bit of trouble here as well. So, and lastly, I want to say this, and then I'll bring in our CEO. I'll show you a little bit of how far back this goes. I want to go to 2013. I take you back to 2013. Our CEO just sent this to us while we were talking earlier today to remind us. And so I wanted to add it to this just to show you that this is not a recent thing. All this Muslim Brotherhood talk that we might see in the next few weeks, it's not new. It's just that we're only talking about it now. But 2013 is an article called Muslim Brotherhood Infiltrates the Obama Administration. I'm just going to read for you an excerpt of it. It focuses on a few people, but I'm only going to focus on one person now. It says, let's start with Mohammed Elibiari, a member of the Homeland Security Advisory Council who has met with national security staff inside the White House. He raises perhaps the most alarm. So now this guy is again, a member of the Homeland Security Advisory Council. Okay. Homeland Security. Now here's his resume. Ellie Bieri has been accused of downloading sensitive material from law enforcement databases. According to the investigative project last month, he tweeted, I do consider, this is his words, I do consider the United States of America an Islamic country with an Islamically compliant constitution. Okay, now it gets deeper. In October, Ellie Bieri blamed persecuted Coptic Christians for inciting violence in Egypt, claiming in a series of offensive tweets that their raising awareness of atrocities they suffered promotes Islamophobic, bigotry and anger by Muslims. Okay, I'm gonna keep going, but just to stop for just, this is 2013. I personally went to Egypt in 2009, 2010, with a group of Christians. We went, our group's focus was to teach English to Sudanese refugees, who many of them are not there anymore. And then the other group's focus that went with us, their focus was they were working with the Coptic Christians in Egypt. Just a few months after I left Egypt is when the Arab Spring happened, and the Coptic Church virtually does not exist anymore in Egypt. Okay, so there are people that we knew personally, and even when we were there were instructions that we had about not being too loud and all that kind of stuff about our faith and about theirs as well, because we could get them in trouble. So we're still living in a Muslim country. It's just that tensions were not as high as they were after we left, right? So we're still able to connect with them, but it was like, hey, let's not be too let's not be too, I can't think of the word, loud and boisterous about your Christian faith, because you have to be you have to be protecting of yourself, and you don't want to get them in trouble, right? Those people that we met probably are not alive anymore, or they managed to flee, right? So he is saying, this guy who, again, he was a member of the Homeland Security Advisory Council for Barack Obama, for President Obama, okay? He says that them calling attention to them being slaughtered and oppressed is Islamophobic. Now, I'm gonna keep on going. So this guy, Ellie Bieri, he went on to defend the recently deposed Muslim Brotherhood leadership in Cairo. And remember, Egypt was smart enough to ban the Muslim Brotherhood and designated an organization that we're not associating with, right? Murdered them. In earlier tweets, he has praised Egyptian jihadist and Muslim Brotherhood leader Saeed Qut, a key mentor of Osama bin Laden. So he praises this guy. Last thing, on his Twitter account, Ellie Bieri sports the Muslim Brotherhood banner. Why is he still advising Homeland Security? Most disturbing, why did he recently get a promotion in the midst of all this controversy? So this is not, again, not conspiratorial. Things out in the open, blatant, and then in the midst of things coming out, he gets promoted. Why? So this is 2013. Now let me back up one more time and just remind you of an event that happened on September the 17th, 2021. September the 17th, 2001, just 6 days after 9/11. President Bush is at the Islamic Center. He's speaking. This is just 6 days after 9/11. He's speaking, and his whole speech is about, I think it's like 8 minutes long. He's all these nice things to say about Islam. Again, there are still people who are burning under the rubble of the plane crash, under the buildings, right? There are people who are down there for weeks and weeks and weeks. Still, it's not just that we're still reeling and suffering and mourning this, but there are people still who are still trying to be accessed so they can be rescued. President Bush is there talking about Islam's original peace, and we love our Muslim brothers and sisters. Who's standing behind him? None other than the head of the Council on American Islamic Relations, CARE, Nihad Awad, who himself has a very, very sketchy at best track record, including very recently, just a few weeks after October 7th, 2023, he makes a speech on November 24th, where he praises what happens on October 7th. He said he was happy to see what took place. He was happy to see Israel sieged and its walls breached, that he was happy, and Israel has no right to defend itself. That's what he says in a speech. Still the head of CARE. And this was the guy who was standing behind George Bush while George Bush was at the Islamic Center giving a speech about how wonderful Muslims are, while Americans were still suffering and burning and dying and suffocating under the rubble and mourning their loved ones who were dead. Okay, that's 2001. So this infiltration of the Muslim Brotherhood into the United States and our government has been there for a long time. What we're seeing now is a manifestation of what's been brewing for decades. That's what I mean when I say that what we're doing is not working. Because if what we were doing is working, this would not be where it is right now. There are plenty of pro-Israel organizations out there. If what we were doing was working, we would not be here now. So IPSI, and along with other groups and colleagues of ours, are continuing to push this new, not even new, but more effective method, which has to do with cutting this thing off at the root. Yes, it's not as sexy. Yes, it's more dangerous and all those things. But if you say that you're standing with Israel, then this is what it means to stand with Israel. We see how the other side is willing to sacrifice their lives for their cause. If we're not willing to do the same, then we really should find another profession. It is difficult. It is hard. It is, but if we say that we stand with Israel, what it's going to take is actually attacking this thing where it's growing, or where it's at its root, instead of just the branches that are popping out. So that's 2001. We could even go further back, but I'm going to stop there for a moment. I want to share with you, and then I'll bring on our CEO. I'll share with you just a recap video of the latest Truth to Power Live episode by our CEO and founder, Pastor Dumisani Washington. You all check this out, and then I'll bring our CEO on to share further.
For decades in the United States, the left has been harboring this anti-Israel, anti-Semitic, institutional, systemic vibe. When we talk about the capture of our academic institutions and the anti-Zionism that's taught there by faculty and the money that floods in from Qatar and China and all the curriculum and all the Students for Justice in Palestine, who do you think controls those institutions? It's not the Heritage Foundation. It's not the Republican Party. It is controlled wholly by the left. The anti-Zionism, which often has all the other leftism stuff, the socialism, the communism, the anti-Western, anti-democracy, it is part and parcel of what has become leftist politics and academia in our country. This is why you have a women's march that becomes an anti-Zionist march, a Black Lives Matter march that becomes an anti-Zionist march, and on and on and on. Why? Because they see it as an intersectional cesspool of what has to happen. If you are a good social justice person, you're against Israel. That's been true for a long time. What's my point? Arguably, no other ethnic group is targeted with anti-Zionist propaganda like Black America. This goes back to the 60s. Why do you think Israel's enemies call it an apartheid state? Because Black South Africans suffered apartheid, which was a scourge on the earth. So you keep calling Israel an apartheid state, you are delegitimizing its existence. And what gives you fodder? That you focus on Black South Africans, let Yasser Arafat take some pictures with Nelson Mandela, boom. Zionism is racism. Why did the United Nations pass that resolution in 1975? Because racism, Jim Crow, apartheid. You see the theme here, right? We are going to exploit what Black people actually went through and lie and say that that's what Israel is doing to the Palestinians. Boom, that's what you get. This has been the tripe that has been pushed, not just on the Black community, but using the Black community to show other people that anti-Zionism or being pro-Palestinian is a good social justice warrior. Within the pro-Israel space, when there are overtures made to the Black community, it's almost always exclusively to progressive Black people. It's fine. You should be able to reach everybody. I know of organizations who explicitly won't even talk to Black conservatives or libertarian. Somehow conservative or libertarian even means somehow they're kind of defective, that if they're not card-carrying leftists or progressives, how can they dare stand, or how are they able to? If I had $1 for every time one of my more liberal Jewish friends told me that abortion is a Jewish right, not Jewish right, Jewish principle, going, what do you mean? What does that have to do with being Jewish? A person, whether they are pro-life or pro-choice, what does it have to do with which religion? And for some of them, someone who's actually pro-life should not even approach the Israel thing because somehow they're disqualified. I'm making a point here. There's a problem when you use the Bible to justify Israel's existence, and then that same person goes to the same Bible and tells them that life begins at conception. Oh, you're a right winger. Okay, see, that's how the game gets played. So either we're going to use the Bible or we're not. Either we pick and choose, because you know what Israel's enemies do? They pick and choose. They'll say stuff like, Israel went in and slaughtered the Canaanites. They committed genocide. Therefore, they have no legal right to the land. You never heard that before. I've heard that millions of times. Right? What gives them the right to go in and that, oh, well, God has this covenant with Abraham, and he told Abraham this land, blah, 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 blah. So what you're doing, you're going to the Bible to explain how Israel came, whether you consider yourself religious or not. There are Black Americans now, multi-generational, who are having very deep conversations. They've been having these conversations in the barbershops and in the churches anyway. But now it's all in the open because Obama comes and starts tongue lashing folks. Black men need to vote for you. You don't want a woman to be ruling over you. All this kind of foolishness, talking out the other side of his neck. And I shared you that video of folks bringing him all the smoke. There is an opportunity here to actually have a Zion-Israel conversation while many in the Black community are sorting through and sifting through what they've been told by the Democratic Party. Alan Dershowitz himself said a few weeks ago, Israel is no longer a bipartisan issue. A lifelong card-carrying Democrat stood up and just spoke the truth that this anti-Zionist systematic thing is very much lodged in what has become the UK labor situation with the Democrats are concerned. Oh, no, I'm a Democrat and I stand with Israel. You are becoming more and more of the minority, whether you want to admit it or not. And those of you who've watched this podcast or have heard any of my lectures anything before, you know, I'll bring the smoke to the right as well. We've been sounding the alarm on a rising anti-Semitism on the Christian right in this country. But that does not mean that for decades, Israel has been getting dragged. Jews have been getting dragged. Jews are white and privileged. That's the intersectionality crap, the critical race theory crap, all those things that our kids are being force-fed, that the diversity, equity, inclusion means white people are evil. And because Jews are white, they are the most evil, and they're all rich. Jews are white and rich, therefore, they are the problem. These kids are learning this. And who's teaching them? It's not right-wingers teaching them that.
Truth to Power Live with Jim and Sally Washington.
So again, that's Truth to Power Live. You can go to TTP Live. I always get this wrong. TTP Live. I want to say org. But ttplive.com.
.com.
Yes. ttplive.com every Sunday at 4 p.m. 4 p.m. Eastern. It's live. You can check that out. And now we have our founder and CEO here. It's hard for me to say Pastor Dumisani, but it's my dad. So hey, Dad. How are you, sir?
I'm good. So I know this was a little impromptu. I know that your co-host is not here on today. And it's been, as you already know, crazy number of few days and weeks and everything. And I was actually going to message you guys earlier today, and say I was going to jump on with you guys for a minute and everything. But then when all that happened, I wound up messaging a little bit later on. But yes, that's ttplive.com. That was part of it was episode 18. We do that every Sunday at 4 p.m. And it wasn't just about that. It was kind of a play off of the whole pushback that the Obama and the DNC was getting for the lecture to the Black men. So absolutely. So we were talking about the political part of it, which I'll be writing about some more as well. Also, Josh, I just want to just touch base. You were discussing, and those of you on my IG, this is Truth to Power Live. I'm just doing it on this since it wasn't going. I just had this going. It's kind of impromptu. Everything's impromptu. Today's one of those days. You had mentioned in that article something I was going to do too, just backing up a little bit, the 2013 article. Yeah, and I just pulled that one up. It goes further back than that, right? But the 2013 article in which it was being discussed about the Muslim Brotherhood operatives within the Obama administration, some which are holdovers in the Biden administration, and then some other newcomers that have been there. And then also he mentioned, I'll just do this one thing, underscore, you had said it, that they were demonizing the Coptic Christian church in Egypt, calling it Islamophobia. Those of you who are listening to Joshua say that, let me be very, very clear. One of the reasons why the topic of Christian persecution in the Arab Muslim world, the same neighborhood that Israel lives in which Christians are free and growing in number, one of the reasons why you don't hear about it very much is that it's politically incorrect, including in pro-Israel spaces. Often that topic gets ignored, not brought up at all, in which not only is it supposed to be, first and foremost, by us as Christians, right? It should be brought up anyway as Christians, but it's also related to what happens in the region, right? If Israel is a free and thriving democracy, which it is, in which there's religious freedom, which there is, in which the Christian population within the Jewish state, just like it's a Jewish state in which there are Muslims and Baha'i and all kinds of faiths and no faiths, the Christian population is not just protected, it's growing. This is something that needs to be championed and explained, especially to Christian supporters of Israel. One of the reasons why it is not is because when it is pointed out about what's going on with Christians in Nigeria or in Egypt or in Sudan, in which they either enslaved or slaughtered, those people are called Islamophobes. And what has happened over a period of time is that the fear of that moniker, the fear of being called that, has been one of the reasons, not the only reason, but one of the reasons why people act like it's just not happening. Meanwhile, as Hamas, Joshua, we realized this, we talked about it before, it was just days or maybe a week after the attacks of October the 7th, that there was a report by, I can't remember the gentleman's name right now, about several, maybe a couple of hundred Sudanese that were slaughtered right around there. And it was a group that had links to Hamas. And some people were, what do you mean by that? What do you mean that Boko Haram, which slaughters Christians in Nigeria, pledged allegiance to ISIS several years ago? Hamas, there was just something that happened in Israel the other day in which it's another one of its atrocities was linked to an ISIS affiliate. This is all the same mindset, ladies and gentlemen. It's flowing from the same trough, unfortunately, when it comes to Islamic terrorism. So this is, again, because it's not either sexy to talk about or because, that's very Islamophobic. I'll say this last thing, Josh, and I'll stop here. Even when other Muslims like the Dr. Zuhdi Jassers and the former Muslims like Ayaan Hirsi Ali's and others have called these things out, they've been called Islamophobes, right? There are other Muslims who've been called Islamophobes for the purpose of, because they're pointing out what's going on that's anti-religious freedom in the area. And so this is something that we have to have the courage to just really get pushed past being called names. It's not grade school, right? And we have to really focus on what is true, regardless of whatever kind of names people are throwing at us and everything.
What is I was just thinking about there's, and you probably can speak to it better, but there's a scripture, I think it's either in Kings or in Isaiah, 2 Kings or Isaiah, where this is like before Nebuchadnezzar, but it was Babylon came to visit Israel, and the king at the time, maybe it was Hezekiah, showed them everything in his kingdom, everything in his closet and everything in his room. Is that kind of accurate to say that that's the season that we're in, or not even season, but how we've been as a country?
Well, it's interesting because that story, and it was Hezekiah and it was Isaiah, and I believe it may have been actually in the book of Isaiah itself, but I mean, maybe in another section it is actually recorded, and the rabbis and pastors are on there. I'm doing this impromptu. I believe these are the players, and Isaiah had come in as the delegation was going back. Literally, he's walking into the king's court. They're leaving, and Isaiah asks him, "Who are these people?" "Oh, they came from Babylon." And I believe the king that sent them was the grandfather of Nebuchadnezzar, right? Because this was several generations before. Right. And he said, "What did you show him?" "I showed him everything." Right? Like he said, "I showed him all this." And he said, "Well, that was very foolish of you. They're going to come back and take everything." Meaning that kingdom is actually going to come. And later on, of course, it was Babylon that comes and plunders Judah in 586 BC, destroying the temple, destroying the wall. I would submit to you, Joshua, that we are at the place of that capture has already happened. We as America, capture has already happened, and we are in an exile, right? This is an exile that we are in, and it's only the beginning of it, right? There's actually unfortunately, it will get better, ladies and gentlemen. It's going to get much worse before it gets better, right? Because you don't have this level of infiltration and this level of corruptness within both parties, right? A lot of selling out of the people without, unfortunately, some very uncomfortable things happening and unfolding in order for righteousness to emerge. That just is what it is. We were talking, Joshua, about the fighting part, right? I shared with Zion, and shout out the Congregation of Zion. I saw a couple of people on my IG over here as well. One of the things we talked about, either the first or the second teaching, we talked about, and you know, Joshua, there was a Ethiopian Israeli soldier, not Ethiopian. He's actually, I believe, he had made Aliyah from India, his family, who happens to be a messianic believer, right? I'm saying this in the context of his testimony is as a believer in Yeshua, he's a leader of one of the guard groups. I can't remember the actual title that he holds militarily, but he serves in the Galilee region, right? Very well beloved, obviously, by for him to rise in the ranks like that and to be a servant. Again, there's Christians and Jews and Muslims. If you know anything about Israel, again, the lies that the media will tell you will blow your mind when you learn the truth. But I remember we were on a call about a year ago, right into the beginning of this war, right? That was happening in Gaza, and Lebanon, as we already know, was already kind of jumping off every once in a while, right? And he said to me, he was talking about the prophets. He's quoting the prophets and Israel and God's promises to Israel, and we have faith and and he says, we're going to win. Then he says to me, some of us are going to have to die. And again, it blew me away as he said it, as I share with other people. In other words, he wasn't speaking defeat. He wasn't saying, oh, woe is us. He's going, man, yep, we're being surrounded. And then he's talking about Gog, Magog. He's like, oh, hey, we are coming to the time in which the Bible talks about the nations coming against us. And this is a soldier who had distinguished himself. He was a leader of other soldiers. And my man, brave, that means the IDF. Hats off to y'all. We're praying for you all, standing with you, the whole thing, right? You guys, these are men and women who just amazing. They are the heroes. They're the Shomer Israel in that sense. Of course, God is the Shomer Israel, but you are Shomreen in that sense, if there's the smaller letter of that sheen, right? But what he was saying was that I'm committed. We are committed as soldiers, like Joshua in the book of Joshua, to defending our homeland. So we are going to do that. Our job is to fight against the enemy and protect our people. We know we will be victorious, even though in the fight, some of us may have to die. And I'm saying to him, my God, the West has no clue as to what's coming. Not you military folks, y'all get it. But by and large, you have no clue as to what's going on. What our Christian brothers and sisters are facing in Iran and places like Nigeria, that type of persecution is on its way. Again, as we said, the Iranian church a couple of times has warned us. So yeah, Joshua, that scripture, Nebuchadnezzar one, I think is applicable. But even beyond that, in terms of being in that exile and having to kind of walk that out right now, because there's been so much compromise on our end as a nation. Once again, God's been very good to us. He's been very gracious to us. But I'm talking about very general in terms of collective sense, but we've been very ungrateful to God. We've been very unthankful, and we've taken a lot of these things for granted. And what happens when that happens is that, you know, life has a way of kind of reminding you what you had, right? And I think that's what's happening right now.
Wow. Yeah, I was just thinking about when you were just talking, when Harry Belafonte, we shared the clip before, was sharing about just days before Dr. King was assassinated. He was talking about a civil rights bill that was about to pass, and he said he was perplexed, and he said that he told Harry Belafonte that I'm afraid, I fear that we've integrated into a burning house, which was interesting because he was assassinated in 1968. Yeah, so just after 68 war. So yeah, and this was in the 60s, just before the 70s, and he was already seeing some things, some ways that we've compromised, which I think even transcended the racial part. It wasn't just the racial thing, but just where he saw our country was going.
It's funny because I read several articles and accounts about that conversation. Again, we don't have his direct words. We have Harry Belafonte's telling them. Not that I'm questioning it, right? He's telling the truth. But even when it said, if you read Harry Belafonte's quotes, he says that Dr. King didn't fully explain what he meant. In other words, they didn't go to because it perplexed Harry Belafonte. What he's at, because he said,
Right.
"What's going on? All right, we have
Right.
these successes. You had the Civil Rights Act, you had the Voting Rights
Right.
Act." And he said, "What's going on?" He says, but this look on his face was a very anticlimactic, like, right? It's funny because not funny. How I mean, it's interesting that I know people like economists like Thomas Sowell had made the comment about that time, saying that he knew that what had been accomplished in the civil rights movement was not going to move the needle economically. But he said, though, it was important to do legislatively. So what his hope was, I remember a couple of interviews saying that then the leaders would kind of turn their attention to the economic part. But he said, unfortunately, that's not what happened. It became more of a just a political type of thing, right? So part of what was going on, it could have been the economic part. It could have been a lot of different things. But what we do know when Dr. King said that, from what Harry Belafonte said, that he felt a foreboding. He saw a very wealthy, powerful America. He saw some problems that were there, and he felt that somehow he just pulled Black folks further in to what the drama was going to be. I will connect it to this. It was in the 70s that Eldridge Cleaver, the former Black Panther who became a Zionist, he surmised, as he was fighting and combating anti-Semitism, combating Israel hatred, doing his thing after he had made his teshuvah right after he had turned. He said, and I talked about this several months ago, that he could foresee a time in which America, I'll just paraphrase it this way, threw Israel under the bus, right? He was talking about Arab oil money, but what he was actually saying was that he foresaw a time in which the United States would no longer continue to. Now, mind you, when he said it, and those of you who want to look for it, I have the quotes on my pages, and I didn't say it in my book, but I definitely said it. It's on my X page, and I may have done a couple other posts, and we can send it out again if we need to. He didn't say he felt one day Israel would turn on America. He said the opposite. Now, this is a man who came up in the struggle, became a Marxist. He was all the way far left. He even was going to, he said in his words, cut Richard Nixon's head off. This dude was about that life, right? He was like out there. So when he came, so he was for him, Eldridge Cleaver, as off the rails as he was, his thing was, this is how committed I am to the struggle, right? A lot of folks talking about it, I'm about that life. So when he got some get right about himself, if you will, when he started to see some things, he brought that same energy. And what he was looking at, he took a step back and he was going, the America that I know often is driven by money, greed, power, like Eisenhower, who warned about the military industrial complex about 20 years before he said this. Yes, Eldridge Cleaver, again, a full-out staunch Zionist, he said he was concerned that he could foresee one day, fast forward to right now, Israel won't even share reconnaissance information with us regarding its attack on Iran because they don't trust us. And hey, hats off. Cool. Because there's a reason why they're not sharing it, because they don't want it in the New York Times. Right? And you can go, that's just, that is mainly coming from one party. The problem is that kind of cancer, ladies and gentlemen, if it's not rooted out, it'll spread. So this is the concern. That's why we'll call it out on the left and the right. And that's why you saw in the video, I was talking about, hey, it's the left that controls these academic centers, although we are watching what's going on the right as well. And so, these are the types of things that these leaders were able to see and say and speak truth to power. And in this day of political correctness, these things generally don't get touched on or talked about.
Right. Yeah, I would even say, as you're saying, that the right has to be careful as well, because right now we're seeing it more and more in the spaces of influencers, people like Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson and other. I mean, Nick Fuentes is more on the fringe, but still. But with the rising of these alternative ways to get a college education, these institutions that have been formed in response to all this leftist stuff, those people could very well be in those institutions. I mean, that's the pool of intellectuals. It's on the right. It's kind of split between Jew hating and not. So you could very well have an institution where you have someone like Jordan Peterson, and then you also have someone like Candace Owens, because they're both conservative and we like them. All the while, Candace is going to be, we could be seeing some of that same stuff in the in the homeschool curriculum, in those alternative lifestyle kind of things. As well.
Absolutely. You can. This is why if we're going to be committed to education and those types of things, we have to be as thorough and for our purposes as prayerful as possible so that we are strategic in what it is that we do. I'm reminded, and I'm not going to get all into it right now. I'll have to probably deal with that in a later time. But of course, Glenn Loury, who is a self-proclaimed Black conservative, who the other day came out full-throated in support of Ta-Nehisi Coates' slander and libel of Israel as an apartheid state, right? And even his own co-host, John McWhorter, was like going, I'm really trying to wrap my head around the fact that you all wanted this evidence. And I said it before, right? So here it is. Glenn Loury, brilliant man, right? And conservative in that sense. I mean, then sometimes I mean, we're all individuals that make our decisions, but somehow this whole anti-Zionist thing, for whatever purposes, right? It is as illogical as it is. You can't bring any receipts about Israel being an apartheid state. You can't bring any receipts about Israel starving the Palestinians, so he's championing that leftist narrative, though he's firmly on the right. So to your point, Joshua, absolutely. We say when it comes to the anti-Semitism, anti-Zionism, that type of thing, it is fluid, right? It is a spiritual phenomenon, first of all, but it's fluid. It'll go anywhere. Black, white, Asian, Hispanic, male, female, left, right. It'll manifest itself in many different ways. And that's the kind of the moment that we're in, particularly in the West, right? We say that in the Middle East and Africa, as like the Abraham Accords showed, right? These African nations that are still struggling with their, United Nations stuff, right? But there is this love for Israel, and we'll get into some of that. As a matter of fact, I'll make a quick announcement. But what we see in the West, though, is the kind of Jew hate. It's in the streets, LA, Chicago, New York. I mean, in schools. I mean, these kids, Jews being attacked in schools, Israel supporters being attacked in the streets, and so on and so forth. It's looking like, Nazi Germany out in here, right? You're talking about Kristallnacht level stuff happening, but not in Africa here, right? Not in, Saudi Arabia, UAE, that, where they're making peace, hey, let's all come together. We're losing our stuff over here. So this is a very interesting moment and a dangerous moment for us in the West, but particularly in the United States.
Right. Yes, sir.
Let me do real quick. I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I think I gave it to our producer, and I forgot to say this before. Tomorrow actually is our final. Every third Tuesday of the month, the Institute for Black Solidarity with Israel hosts what's called IPSI Pastors Presents. We have not done it since the end of the summer, but we have one more before this calendar year is over, and it is entitled Vision 2050. Most of the world's Christians will be in Africa. And this is based on a couple of different things. One of those is a Pew Research information that actually says that by around this time, the largest percent of Christians will actually be in Africa and Latin America as well. Put the graphic one more time up for Ms. Producer. So it's going to be on tomorrow, Tuesday, October the 15th. Now, this is especially for bishops, pastors, and ministry leaders of Christian ministries, but others are welcome as well. So if you want to join us, go ahead and register to ibsi.org/dates. You see that on there. You'll see the same graphic on there. Click on there. It is a Zoom RSVP. Go ahead and register there so you can be notified, and we'll be there 8 p.m. Eastern. I will be joined. Thank you very much, Ms. Producer. And I guess you can do the QR code there as well. I will be joined by the co-presenter, who's also, of course, one of the co-hosts of the forum. She's not here on today. Olga Mashwe Washington, of course. Not only is she a board member of IPSI, not only is she on the Speakers Bureau, but she's also a South African national. And those of you who don't know already, she is the daughter of Reverend Kenneth Mashwe, who is both a parliament member and the founder of DAISY, which is acronym for Defend, Embrace, Invest in, and Support Israel, a Black South African pro-Israel organization founded the exact same year as IPSI. I did not know Reverend Mashwe. We didn't know each other at the time. It's one of those God things. We started them the same year doing this work. We met later on. Of course, our children met later on, and so several years later and 2 grandsons later, God be praised. So that wasn't the plan, but again, that's just let you know, there's the guy said, "May he strengthen you out of Zion." So that'll preach by itself. Anyway, we will be presenting together on tomorrow. Actually, she'll be doing the lion's share of it, but I will be sharing some commentary, and then we'll be doing some questions and answers. So pastors, leaders, ministry leaders, And not only if you're invited, if you're checking that out, go ahead, fill that out. If you know of any other pastors and leaders who would like to join us tomorrow at 8 p.m., Tuesday, October the 15th, go ahead and then send them that link so that they can register as well. We also record them, so we'll be able to send it out as well. So again, we will be sharing, but we'll also be doing some Q&A. The last thing about that topic, we're talking to these particularly Black pastors and leaders about the importance of what's going on in Africa, why we need to know that, what that means for us here in this country, what that means for the whole Israel part. We'll talk about the national security part of it and everything, which we're doing a series on why the U.S.-Israel relationship is a matter of national security now more than ever before. So we're going to be unpacking some of those areas on tomorrow, Josh.
Awesome. So yes, you guys scan the QR code. There's other dates on there as well, and then we have some pending stuff. So that's tomorrow. That's tomorrow though. So you guys need to, if you want to be a part of it, register and join us tomorrow, 8 p.m. Eastern time. You don't want to miss it. Especially, I see you, Pastor Matrilla Hall here. Shout out to Pastor Matrilla Hall, one of our IPSI pastors. Definitely. Hope we get to see you tomorrow, ma'am. And thank you for continuing to share. That's pretty much the time we have is 9:03.
Now, did you have something else, Joshua? I know that I don't know if you had, I saw another graphic there or something like that, that you wanted to share, another topic that you wanted to get into. Did you want to wait on that, or?
No, this was pretty much it. I mean, this was it. So we're talking about the main thing is, bringing the war home, which is what we shared from Canary Mission. A few weeks ago, there was an article. Well, you wrote one about the America-Israel relationship being a matter of national security. And then a few weeks before that, I wrote one about terrorism being at our front door, about Hezbollah being all over, having cells all over the different parts of the world, including Latin America, and many have crossed over the border in here. So it is definitely, I was just in a meeting right before this talking about that while all this, both on the left and then both just in the establishment, the DNC, GOP, all this political infighting and stuff, it's distracting from the real threat. After 9/11, we were all united. We all came together for a short time, but there was a recognizing that we are Americans and we were attacked. Now, it's I don't think that if something like that ever happened again, which we're not hoping that, but if it does, there wouldn't be that same type of thing. And I think mainly because there are a lot of people who are ushering it in, that are either a part of it or don't really care that it's happening. So it's yeah. Go ahead, sir.
No, the capture. So two things. Number one, this week, everyone, starting tomorrow, the next Africa Israel Weekly will be published. It'll also actually be a piece by Olga Mishway Washington that is a continuation of another thought where the United Nations in Africa is concerned. So that's already been pinned. It should be published by early tomorrow morning. It should be out there. And then later on, before the week is over, probably by Wednesday or Thursday, part 2 of the series that we started, which is the U.S.-Israel relationship as a matter of national security. There's 3 parts to it. Part 1 was a couple weeks ago. Again, you can go to ibsi.substack.com. You can check them all out. One of those next articles is going to be for premium subscribers only. So one of them will be, I'm not sure at this moment which one of them will be free to anybody who subscribes for free. And the other one, though, will be only available to those who pay. And I think it's between $5 and up a month. Of course, any of the premium subscribers, those proceeds go to help the work of the Institute for Black Solidarity with Israel. So you're going to see those coming up here pretty soon on the Africa Israel Weekly as we discuss these things. And the last thing, other than those articles that are coming, the capture, meaning the subversion, it is difficult to overstate. And for those who get, the problem with the term conspiracy theorist, I believe it was a term actually created by the CIA for the reason of actually downplaying things that were actually legit. Yes. Are there wackadoos who just make up stuff about? Yeah, absolutely. There's always going to be that. But just because something may seem far-fetched, right? That person doesn't be a whack. It could be something that's actually going on. There has been so much infiltration by Islamists, communists, all that kinds in our nation for such a long period of time that much of the information that people do need. I know that Robert F. Kennedy has been talking for a long time, sounding the drum before he joined the Trump campaign, right? I'm not being political. I'm just saying this right here. as he's talked about the capture of our different institutions within the government. But he's brought the receipts, right? He talked about here's the Food and Drug Administration, here's the Department of Defense, here is the intelligence. So he again, and hey, dude's father was running for president and was the Attorney General for the United States, and I believe was a senator as well. His uncle was one of the most famous presidents that there is. Both of them assassinated. You might want to listen to what this man has to say, right? So the reason I'm mentioning that is that by now, there is so much infiltration and there's so much dishonesty and so much, backslapping and it doesn't mean that we can't still uphold truth. We need to, right, and declare that, but we just need to be aware of the fact that there's much of the opposition is sometimes inside, not so much outside. In other words, like we were talking about that article you read, 2013, why is Muslim Brotherhood operatives all up in the Homeland Security? Right? That was almost 12 years ago, right? So there was an article in New York Post last week about Kamala Harris was at this event where this cleric from Iran, right? He's there and hobnobbing, and people are like, oh, you're coming against them. No, I'm saying, why does somebody with clear terrorist ties, how does he get to just sit down with heads of state? That's the vice president of the United States. Where's the clearance, right? Oh, there was a clearance, there was a list, and he was approved. So it's not like he just wandered in, right? These people. So this has been going on for a while. And as you talk about, Joshua, make it bipartisan. The head of CARE standing right next to George Bush, 2001, who's Republican. So clearly, this capture has been very, very much embedded, which is also why we are where we are on our college campuses. Like you just said, the Students for Justice in Palestine, they get all the headlines or the pictures, but who's behind them? Where's the money? Who's that's what's actually going on, and that doesn't really get addressed. So it is going to be a battle, but again, it's a battle worth fighting for the freedom in our nation, for our relationship with Israel, and particularly for our focus within the Black community, how it often gets used and manipulated and exploited in this fight, which is why we want to make sure that we're bringing information and that we are empowering people like we were able to do and had a wonderful time doing it with the Black pastors there in DC last month. And we're looking forward to going across the country along with our friends and our partners there at the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews. Shout out to you, Pastor Roger Cheeks, and shout out to you. I want to say Rebitson, Yael Eckstein. I know she doesn't want to go by that title. I'll just be saying that for right now, but we're looking forward to those partnerships and those connections as well. So again, before I say some more stuff that I'm not supposed to be talking about just yet, I'm gonna stop right there. So yes, sir. So look out for those articles, everyone. ibsi.substack.com. All right.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. And yes, you also please again, if you're as we're wrapping this up, go to ibsi.org. If you haven't heard of us before, check it out. Become a donor, a one-time donor or a legacy builder. If you appreciate these live forums and what we've been doing in our work, our content and everything, support IPSI by going to ibsi.org/donate. You can do that now. And again, the need for IPSI has grown exponentially. We have a lot of things lined up, even just to close out this year. We have a lot of things lined up. And then 2025, we're going to be hitting the ground running. And so we need your help. We need your support. Share these forums, share the content that we have, support IPSI with your dollars, and we will continue to do what we can and do the work that we're doing in strengthening the Black and Jewish and Africa-Israel relations, y'all. And also a shout out to the African Jewish Alliance. I forget to do that from the beginning. Great partners of ours, doing amazing work in combating slavery on the African continent. You can also support them by scanning the QR code. We work very closely together. As a matter of fact, a lot of our events next year will be in conjunction with them as well, because both of the fights are kind of one, and so we're doing these together. Was there something else you wanted to add to?
Yeah, AfricanJewishAlliance.org. Absolutely, you guys do that. And also, Joshua, next week we'll remind you of the academic conference that I think both you and I will be at in Sacramento in about 2 weeks from now, but we'll say some more about that on next week. So shout out to Jennifer Richmond, and I believe our friend Dr. Brandy will be out there. Brandy Shupatinsky, I think she'll be out there as well. Eric, I'm all these different names from Free Black Thought. Eric Smith,
And
Yes, so
Tabby
yeah.
Ali, Dr. Tabby Ali as well. Yeah.
Dr. Tabby Lee, shout out to you, Dr. Tabby Lee. So all that. So we're looking forward to being with everybody in a couple of weeks in Sacramento, California. All right. So yeah, look for that too. That was both times. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I'm making sure. Sorry, I'm reading stuff I'm not supposed to read. But anyway, okay. All right, Joshua, I think I'm out.
All right, you all. Thank you, sir. And you all, thank you very much. That's it. You guys tune in next week, same time, same place, 8 p.m. Eastern time, and we'll see you then, y'all. All right, take care.